hemoglobin. Okay, the blood is high in CO2. Remember, high in CO2 in the capillary in the blood, and then it is low here, so it's going to go right across. So this is called the external respiratory part, where there's a gas exchange. What about internal? Okay, internal respiration, gas exchange between the blood and the cell. So now here comes the blood, okay, the fresh blood, and here's the cell. Okay, the cell just finished metabolizing. Okay, so it's the same thing. Okay, it is filled with carbon dioxide. Okay, so now the partial pressure of the cell is partial pressure of the CO2 is very high here. Okay, it's going to diffuse across here. Okay, again, oxygen is very high here, but very little here, so it's going to diffuse right across here. Okay, it's still about partial pressure difference. Cell of the body will constantly use oxygen, so it's always low. Carbon dioxide is a byproduct of the metabolism, so the cell of the body are always high in carbon dioxide. Okay, gas transport, blood transport O2 and CO2 between the lung and the cells. Gas enter the blood, they dissolve in the plasma or chemically combine with atom or molecule. Okay, now we're going to talk about how oxygen is transported. So remember, we talked about a gas needs to be soluble to the soluble to a liquid. Okay, but oxygen is actually not very soluble in blood. Okay, so it needs another compound. It's called hemoglobin. Okay, so oxygen has low solubility, so 98% of the oxygen carried in the blood is bound to a protein called hemoglobin in the form of oxyhemoglobin. Okay, the partial pressure of oxygen determines how much load, as well as the affinity for hemoglobin. So oxygen is going to go to the hemoglobin. Okay, and the more oxygens are bound to the hemoglobin, the more they want more oxygen. Okay, so here is one hemoglobin. Okay, can hold four oxygen. Okay, so here is a red blood cells. It's got, I think, about 1 million, okay, or 250,000 heme group in here. Okay, not just one. Okay, so each heme group can carry 4 oxygen. Okay, so then it will be full. Okay, so you can have about 1 million, I think, or 100 million oxygen molecule in one red blood cells. Okay, this is called the oxygen dissociation graph. Okay, oxygen dissociation is unloading from the hemoglobin. Now remember I told you that when oxygen comes in, the more oxygen, the more they want more oxygen. Okay, so this is where that graph comes in. Okay, so partial pressure of oxygen start with 0. Okay, so if you think if there is, here is the oxygen saturation. So normally it would be like a straight line like this. Okay, but here you can see, as partial pressure, as more oxygen is accumulated in the red blood cells, okay, the more it wants. Okay, so the higher the partial pressure of oxygen, the more O2, and the lower the PO2, which is partial pressure of oxygen, the more hemoglobin. Okay, this means that oxygen is bound in the lung and releases in the tissue. At rest, 75% of the O2 remain bound to hemoglobin in the venue. I think we saw this already. in the venue is more like a reserve. Okay. So again, here's the relationship, partial pressure of hemoglobin saturation. Okay, so the more saturated it is, the more it wants oxygen. Okay. What else affects it? Three things, couple of things I think. Temperature will affect it. pH will affect it. Okay. pH and temperature have a direct effect. Higher temperature or lower pH, more oxygen will unload. So the hotter the outside or your body temperature is, you will unload more oxygen because your body will metabolize more. And when you have lower pH, you remember what is lower pH? Lower pH is when you have more hydrogen ion, okay, which have more metabolism. Okay, then you will release more oxygen. Androgen, epinephrine, thyroid hormone, growth hormone stimulate oxygen delivery too. Okay. So you can see here. Okay, here's a temperature. Okay. And as the temperature increases, it will unload more oxygen. And here is kind of holding it. This one is the pH. Okay, as you get more acidic, it wants to unload more oxygen. What about carbon dioxide? So we saw how oxygen, it is transported through the hemoglobin. So carbon dioxide actually goes through a different pathway, okay, which we're going to go through. Let's see. So blood flow to the systemic capillary to gain CO2. Again, CO2 is high in the cell, and it needs to come in here. Now here's that formula, and we're going to go through it, okay? It gains CO2 because the cell has metabolism and high in CO2. It is then, so CO2 plus water will form this thing called a carbonate. Okay, it's called form carbonate. And then that's how it is transported. Okay, HCO3, okay, which is the carbonate, dissolved in the plasma as carbonic acid. And then it is dissolving in the plasma. Okay. And then that's how it is transported in the red blood cells or in the plasma. So CO2 is transported to the lung in one of three forms. CO2 is dissolved in the plasma. Okay, right here, it is dissolved in there. As part of the compound with hemoglobin, 20%, it binds to the amino part, so it does not compete with the heme group. So it also can go into the amino. Carbon dioxide can also go into the hemoglobin, but most of the time it is converted into the carbonate form, which is right here. From the cell, we need to remove the CO2, so this is the same thing. It's driven by the pressure. The erythrocyte have carbonic anhydrase, okay, which form the carbonic acid that dissociate into carbonate ion. So here's that carbonate ion, okay, and hydrogen ion. So here CO2 with water becomes the carbonate ion, okay, and it will dissociate into this as well. Why does your pH plummet? Hemoglobin, okay. The deoxyhemoglobin will bind the H2. So the hemoglobin can act as a buffer, okay, because then it will become too acidic. So it will turn, once it binds to the hydrogen ion, it will act as a buffer so that it will become not acidic. Chloride shift effect. HCO3 to leave the cell and enter the plasma, while the chlorine in the plasma enter the cells. And we're going to see a little video on that as well. The lungs will remove the carbon dioxide from the body and reverse to the reaction of the pressure gradient. So again, if there is, once the lung removes the carbon dioxide, the pressure will then change, and that's how your body is exchanged. So here it is. Here's the lung, the alveoli. Okay, here's the alveolar wall. Remember, it's one single cell. Okay, here's a cell wall of the alveoli, and here's the cell wall of the capillary. It's one single. So CO2 will now exit the lungs through this carbonate ion. Okay, binds to the hydrogen ion, become carbonic acid right here, and then it will transform into water, and it releases the CO2. So again, this formula is reversible. Okay, that's how carbon dioxide is exited through the cell. And one of the way carbon dioxide is dissolved into the plasma and then just dissolve outside. Hyperpnea, increased rate and death seen in exercise or disease. So if you have increased breathing like that will be hyperpnea. Okay, well, hyperventilation is too fast. Okay, increased ventilation unrelated to oxygen need. Okay, your body just in the state of attack or panic attack or whatever, you will lead to hyperventilation. And when you breathe out too much, okay, your body will have a low partial pressure of CO2 and a high pH. Okay, so your body is now too basic. Okay, remember when you have too much carbon dioxide, you will have low pH. Okay, in high altitude, oxygen is still 21%. There's a decrease in total pressure. Okay, when the pressure is decreased, then you have something called the altitude sickness. Erythropenia, too little. Oh, well, that's another thing. When you have altitude sickness, then later on your body will start making more red blood cells to achieve homeostasis. Okay, that's why this is called doping. And this is how the lung is formed. Starts at 4th week. Okay. So here, week 27, 28, that's when surfactant will start producing in the cells. After birth, lungs are filled with amniotic fluid, mucus, and surfactant. This is squeezed out when you are born through the vaginal canal. Then neonatal will inhale, and then it will inflate the alveoli. Okay, and then we'll have a couple of videos to show you in the lecture, and I'll see you then.